Hey guys! Hi! I'm waving from behind. This is Jen VanBenschoten, coming to you guys live from upstate New York. I'm having some technical glitches with my phone and I can't seem to turn the camera around. So you're not going to get to see my face today, but I am going to show you guys how to wrap stones. And if you're watching, just say hi, say hello. Um, Let me know where you're from, where you're watching from. I am here in upstate New York, where it is still very much like winter. We're still under about a foot of snow up here. Um, and I'm grateful to be cozy indoors with a fire going in my wood stove. But I'm here today because I was asked by Sarah James to show you guys how to do some wire wrapping with cabochons. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm full disclosure. I've been doing this for less than a year. Hi, Anya. Oh, I'm so happy to see you here. So, like I said, full disclosure, I've only been doing this since last summer, really. I actually, I actually started, I actually started out making jewelry. I actually started working with wire about 20 years ago, and I gave up. I just said to heck with it. I got really frustrated and I gave up. And then it's a funny story because a really dear friend, a really sweet friend, sent me an entire box of cabochons over the summer and said, here, have some fun, see what you can do with these. And I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do with these? I was like, I had no idea. And I knew that I wanted to do them justice. Like, it was such a generous gift from my friend. And I really wanted to do them justice. So I found this one tutorial, like, in the dusty corners of the internet, and I don't know, something clicked and I wrapped cabochons for like days straight. Um yeah, thanks, my nails. If anybody's interested, I can totally hook you up with nails. I have a friend who does these for me, so I can hook you up. But anyway, um yeah, and if you're watching, share the video. You can share the video on your Facebook page. Yeah, so so I've been doing this. I've been doing this just for less than a year, really. And I found this one tutorial that really worked for me, and then I went nuts looking for looking for YouTube videos, and I have been watching mad YouTube videos, and in less than a year, I have wrapped literally hundreds of cabochons. And the great thing about these techniques that I'm going to show you is that they're super adaptable. Like, you can wrap any stone with what I'm about to show you, whether it's a calibrated, whether it's like a calibrated oval cabochon like this, right? You see the back. I like to keep my back sort of neat, sort of nice and neat. Right? I like to keep them sort of nice and neat. And it doesn't matter. The great thing about these techniques is it doesn't matter what shape what shape you're trying to wrap, right? This is a clear quartz, a raw quartz crystal that I wrapped using these exact same techniques. And you can do it with raw slabs. This is labradorite, super flashy labradorite that I love. Okay. And, me in particular, I love, for whatever reason, I am just really attracted to, I'm really attracted to these unusual shaped cabochons, right? Don't get me wrong, I love the beautiful calibrated ones, right? This is an Eye of Horus, in labradorite, okay? And I love those, but I also love the fact that these techniques you can use to wrap anything. This is a piece of plum jasper. This is something called solar quartz, or I've also seen it called black sunstone. It's a really beautiful stone. See my camera? There we go, right? Super flashy, super cool. Yeah, I love labradorite too. And then there's this beauty. which is a solar quartz, a dyed solar quartz, right? Which looks kind of like amethyst. There's another one here that's teal, dyed teal, right? A piece of dendritic agate that I love. I kind of went overboard the last time I bought cabochons, and I might have bought, I don't know, I might have bought like 30 of these. And I absolutely love them. And this is a piece of old stock Chinese turquoise from my collection that I've been hoarding for probably about 20 years. I think it's time to find it a new home. So I wrapped it up with a tiny little, what do you call that? Carnelian. Okay. So, like I said, the great thing about these techniques that I'm going to show you today, you can use them to wrap any shape stone. The basic principles are the same no matter what. So I was sent these stones very generously, thank you, by Dakota Stones, right? A beautiful tiger eye, a square tiger eye. This is a matte carnelian. It's a beautiful matte finish carnelian. And this is a rose quartz that I added to from my own personal stash, a little amethyst there on the bottom. I love the combination of amethyst and rose quartz. It's just super cool. So I'm going to start with this guy today, with this carnelian, this matte finish carnelian, okay? And what I'm using to wrap, now, what I'm using to wrap is I'm using square 20 gauge copper wire, okay? You can do this with round wire. You can do this with 20 gauge round wire, or even with 18 gauge round wire if your stone is big enough. But if you're just getting started, I would recommend getting your hands on some square copper wire. It's easier to use. When I first started, I didn't have any square copper wire, so I did the round, and it was much harder. For me anyway, it was much harder. So, you know, but of course I like to do things the hard way, you know, so now that I can do it very well with round copper wire, I find that it's much easier to do with the square copper wire. And then I have some 22 gauge half round copper wire, okay? And at this gauge, right, at this gauge, it can be a little tricky to tell which end is up, right? The half round copper wire, I'm just going to trim a little bit of it here. The half round copper wire, one side is flat, and I don't know if you can really, it probably doesn't translate well. This is the flat side right here. And this is the round side, right? So this half round wire, you know, it's like a flat bottom with a tiny little dome on top. So it gives you this nice rounded look, right? It gives you this beautiful, not so much there, but like you can see here, right? It gives you this really nice rounded look, okay? And again, you can use, if all you have is round wire, go for it. You can use round wire as well. You just want to make sure to give it a little extra squeeze with your pliers. So I've got my favorite Xuron pliers here. I've got my cutter, and I've got my needle nose. I really like these. This particular Xuron cutter or pliers, because the needle nose is really narrow, it's really tiny, and it's perfect for grabbing things. It works really well. I really like it. So to start, you're just gonna take a tiny little, you're gonna take a little piece, you know, this is what, like maybe 2 inches, right? A little 2-inch piece. And right, when you cut your we're gonna start with 3 pieces of square copper wire, okay? Now, depending on the size of your cabochon, no, half round wire has actually been around for quite a while. I only recently started using it though. And I really like it. It's a little bit of a learning curve. But it's totally worth it. Totally worth it. Okay. And this is, you know, this is like a perfect beginner, right? If you're a beginner, you can totally do this. There's nothing terribly fancy. All you really have to know how to do is how to bend wire. Okay. So anyway, so for measuring, so I'm starting with 3 pieces of the square copper. And when I have this, or when I have this square copper wire, right, I kind of eyeball it. Like you can measure if you want. I prefer to eyeball it. That's just me. And I want to make sure that I've got a few inches above the top of my cabochon, and then I double it because we want to make sure that we have enough to go all the way. I don't know if I can get far enough out. We want to make sure we have enough to go all the way around the cabochon. So these are maybe 8 inches or 9 inches. These are maybe 8 inches or 9 inches. And this cabochon is a 30 by 40 millimeter calibrated cabochon. Okay. And this is the, this is the biggest cabochon that I would recommend doing this particular technique with. Anything bigger, right? Because you can see on this one, this is another 30 by 40, right? And I don't have the sides like bound together or anything. This is about the biggest size that I would recommend. Anything bigger, right? Anything bigger like this giant piece of tiger eye, and I would recommend adding little wraps on the side. And we'll talk about that when I show you the when I show you how to do the square one, because the square one you're gonna bind the sides. You're gonna put little wraps on the sides. But for this one, you really don't need to. Okay. So to get started, you're going to line them all up, right? Get them as even as possible. And I like to just, run my fingers over them. You can use a pair of wire straightening pliers with the nylon jaws if you have that. I like to get my hands dirty, so I prefer to just do it with, just run my fingers over it, right? Make sure they're all lined up nice and square. And then you're going to start wrapping in the center with your half round wire. And you're going to put the flat side against the wire so that the rounded side is up. And you're just going to start wrapping. Okay. And what I like to do also, so while I'm holding this, you can see while I'm holding this, I'm keeping, I hope you can see. Here we go. Come on, camera. Yeah. Okay. So I'm using one finger, one hand to kind of keep these wires from like smushing on top of each other. We want to keep them lined up as much as possible. So I'm wrapping one side with one hand and I'm holding them with the other, holding them in place. Okay. Now, so you're going to see I got that little wonky tail here. That's totally okay. That's what we have pliers for and fingernails. And I'm just going to kind of like nudge it down. If you want, you can use your pliers to just kind of smush it, give it a gentle smush. Okay. And then I'm going to keep wrapping on this side. And again, while I'm wrapping, I'm holding them straight. Okay. I'm holding them even with one hand while I wrap with the other. All right. And we're just going to do this on the bottom. Do this on the bottom. Okay. Now what we want is we want to have both tail ends, right? When we end, we want to have both tail ends on the same side on that interior. Okay. So we've got a little extra wire here, and I'm just going to clip, and I'm just going to clip. Okay. So now you can see we have like a nice sort of even, right? And it's okay if it's not perfectly even. You want it in as centered as possible, okay? Don't worry about measuring, okay? You just eyeball it, all right? Don't drive yourself crazy with measuring and trying to make everything totally even. And then I'm just going to smush it down with my pliers, right? You see how nice and flat that looks now? Okay. Let's give it another little smush, right? And the smushing has a couple of purposes. One, it makes that wrap, it tightens up the wrap. So see, like it can't really move. Like I can't really move it here, okay? You want that to be, right? So you want to center it first and then smush it so that it doesn't move around too much, okay? All right. So now that we have that, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do the pointed end or if I'm going to do the round end. I think I'm going to do a round. I guess I'm going to, no, actually I take that back. I'm going to do a round. I'm going to do a round end. Okay. So then what we're going to do, I'm going to lay this down. You can do it. You can either lay it down. Okay. Sometimes that's easier. And I'm going to put that wrapped end right here on the bottom of my cabochon. And then I'm just very gently going to bend around, okay? And again, don't worry if they're not totally symmetrical, totally even. You're just going to gently bend, okay? And again, as you're bending this shape, you want to, and this is why I might set it down here, because you want to make sure that your wires stay stacked, okay? So that the one that's on top stays on top, the one that's in the middle stays in the middle, and the one that's on the bottom stays on the bottom, okay? You always want to make sure that they stay stacked, and you'll see why, okay? So now that we've got this, I'm going to do this reasonably even up here, right? You can leave a little gap up at the top there. It's totally okay. You can leave a little gap up at the top. And then I'm just going to take my fingers and I'm going to pinch. Make a little pinch. Okay? Make a little pinch as close to center as possible. Okay? And this is where, okay, so this is also where you might find your wires kind of getting out of place. Okay, let me hold it up and pick it up and show you guys. Okay, you might find them getting out of place. So again, you want to make sure that they stay lined up just like this, and you'll see why in a few minutes. Okay, so make sure that these, once you've got your shape, right, you got your basic shape. It looks pretty good so far. All right, looks pretty good. And you're going to pinch these together. You're going to leave the cabochon out of it for now, okay? Pinch these together, and again, checking to make sure that the wires stay stacked in the right order. And then we're going to take, this is way too long for me, so I'm going to cut this maybe about, I don't know, maybe about 8 inches again, right? 8 inches of my half round wire. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see, okay, so there's my flat end. So I'm going to put the flat end of your half round wire somewhere near that little pinch, okay? Somewhere near that little pinch. And then I'm just going to start wrapping, and I'm going to wrap this as tight as I can, okay? So don't feel, so again, I'm holding these. Again, notice how I'm holding these with my my non-dominant hand. I'm keeping things pretty much stacked as best I can. And if you feel like you need to give it a little pull with your pliers, okay, give it a gentle tug with your pliers. Make that wrap nice and tight. And we're just going to go around, I don't know, 3 times maybe. All right. And then I'm going to take that little end and I'm going to tuck it inside the bezel here, okay? I'm going to tuck it inside, wrap it around the outside, okay? And usually I have a little more, than this left over, but I'm just going to smush it down, right? You see how I'm keeping my wires stacked nice and even here, right? Keeping them in the same place. I'm going to smush it down, tighten it up, okay? So now that we've got this started, right, and you can see here's my flat side coming out. So now, this is why it's important to keep, there's one reason why it's important to keep these 3 wires stacked in the same position the whole time, okay? Because what we're going to do, and you can see on the top here, see how like some are, they're uneven? It's because I didn't get it exactly in the middle. And again, that's totally okay. You know, that's totally okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this top wire, okay? Hi, Debbie. No, this wire that I'm using is square copper for the bezel, and I'm wrapping it with the half round, okay? So then you're going to follow that, and you're going to find the 2 wires that are on top, okay? These 2 wires, you see how they go up and they come down, and I'm going to bend these forward. All right, then I'm going to take the rest of these and I'm just going to bend them off to the side. I'm going to split them up and bend them off. Okay, so we've got 2 pairs of wires on either side, And we've got these two down in front. Now this is going to be the bail, okay? This is going to be the bail. And I'm going to try not to drop it. I'm going to take this and very carefully, so that I've still got the flat side down, I'm going to bring that under, okay? Bring that under these two bail wires right here. And then up and over, okay? So again, so the flat side is wrapping around these bail wires, okay? It's wrapping, whoop, I just whacked my tripod here, sorry about that. So, right, wrapping around. And again, I'm just going to either use my fingernail, or you can use your pliers to like nudge them down. Now these two wires, okay, as you wrap around these two wires, you might notice it twist a little bit. And that's okay if it twists, because we're going to straighten everything out before we make the bail, before we finish the bail. Okay, so just keep wrapping and smushing down with your fingers. All right. And again, right, keep track. Make sure you're always wrapping. I'll give you a little tip for working with this half round wire, because it is kind of a learning curve. Be mindful of how you're wrapping it, because what I didn't realize when I was using when I was using just regular round wire on these bales, it's, you know, you can twist the round wire and it doesn't really matter, you know, like if it doesn't stay absolutely flat. If you get a tiny little twist in that half round wire, it's not going to look right. You're going to notice. And I wish I had a mistake here to show you that I left, so you can see what it looks like when you have, right, you'll know right away. You'll see right away. You'll see right away when you have the flat side up and the half round side. So you'll notice. The good news is that if you catch yourself doing that, it's super easy to just take your pliers, give it a gentle little twist, right? You don't want to twist it too much, but you just want to turn it just a little bit so that you're back on track with, right? So that you're back on track with the flat side, right? So what I like to do, right, while I'm holding this, right, I'm holding the flat end. I'm holding it like this and wrapping it. What you'll also notice too is that as you hold, right, as you draw your finger, here's another reason to use this, another reason I like using my fingers with this. As I'm wrapping and I'm kind of like drawing my fingers down that half round wire, I'm also hardening it just a little bit, right? Because this is all dead soft. I don't know if I said that at the beginning. This is all dead soft wire. So you're actually like kind of work hardening it a little bit, which makes it a little easier to use, a little stiffer, okay? Holds up a little better. Right, so I'm gonna wrap, I'm probably gonna use most of this for my bail, because I usually like to make big bails. So that way you can put, you know, if you have like a chain you want to use, you can use a chain with, you know, pretty much any size clasp on it, right? And you'll see, right, like these two wires are going to kind of want to go whoop, they're going to want to twist around. It's okay, you can just kind of bring them back to center. You can use your pliers, just bring them back to center every time, right? I used to be a yoga teacher, and we always say, come back to center, come back to your breath. So do that with your wires. Bring your wires back to center. Okay. And I'm just going to, I guess I'm going to use all this. To heck with it. I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to have a nice big bail on this one. Here we go. Okay. So again, we got that little tail, all right? And I'm just going to trim it before I smush it with my pliers, before I squish it down, right? And then I'm going to take my pliers. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingers, right, to get this nice and even, okay? Net this nice and even. And I'm going to smush it down. I'm going to give that a little squish with my pliers. And then I'm just going to go squish, squish, squish all the way home. Sorry, my camera's shaking here. I'm going to go squish, squish, squish all the way home. You see how I'm just going to kind of flatten it? Each one. I'm going to flatten them. Okay, so we get that nice flat bail, and I'm just going to give my bail a little twist here. Okay, so now we've got our bail all wrapped. We've got our pairs of wires on the side, And then now you can use, if you have like a bail making pliers, you can use like a pencil or a chopstick or whatever to shape the bail. But what I find is that now that I've got it wrapped, it actually just kind of shapes itself pretty easily here, right? I don't usually use a plier to shape my bail, okay? And I'm gonna just bend it down the back. Okay, so this is the back. Okay, that's the back of my bezel here. I'm just gonna give it a little, straighten it out just a little bit, right? And then you see I got these two long tails here. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim them a little bit, just so they're easier to work with, okay? And I'm gonna pull them through the back so they come out the front, okay? You see them coming out the front? Okay. And then I'm gonna split them apart. Okay, I'm gonna split them apart. And I'm gonna, right, you see here? So I'm gonna move these. That's the beauty of using dead soft. You can just move these out of the way, no worries. And so then I'm gonna take these, and again, right, and you see how I've still got my 3 wires here, right? I've still got my 3 wires here stacked just exactly the way they need to be. And then I'm going to bend these 2 little tails back over. Okay? So I've got them bent over. All right. Now what I'm going to do is so this is like making this bail and tucking these ends in. This is another way that we are going to be able to kind of secure the bezel, okay? And it works, like I said, it works with stones up to about 40 millimeter by 30 millimeter. Anything bigger than that, and you're going to have to add some of those extra wraps around the side. But we don't have to do that today. We don't really have to do that today. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pliers here, and I'm just going to reach under somehow, some way, and smush it down. Give it a little squeeze. Okay, so you see how that's like squeezed down now? Okay, you see there's like a little gap there. I don't know if you can see. I hope you can see. There's a little gap between that tail and the 3 bezel wires. Okay, and I'm just going to come in here and smush it down, sort of. The things that happen when you're doing a live feed. Here we go. Smush it down. There we go. Okay. And then again, I'm just gonna shore it up here, right? So we've still got these 2 little tail wires now, and we're gonna tuck them in. Okay, we're gonna tuck them in and secure them again. All right, so again, I'm just gonna eyeball it here because I've done so many of these. I'll be honest with you guys, the best way to learn how to do this is practice, practice, practice. I think I have wrapped, I estimated the other day, I think since I got my first real batch of stones from my friend, yeah, practice, Anya. So I've probably wrapped over 200 cabochons since September, I think, is when since probably the end of August. So I've wrapped well over 200 of these. And every time I learn something different. So here we go. So, right, I'm going to trim it just so there's a little teeny tiny, there's just enough to tuck under. Okay. And again, this is another reason why I really love these narrow needle nose pliers, because then I'm going to take that little tail and I'm going to go whoop, I'm going to give it a tiny little bend and I'm going to smush it. Tiny little bend and smush it. So I don't know if you can kind of see from the inside here, right? I'm going to give it a little bit of a smush. And again, while I'm smushing, I'm being careful not to muck around too much, right? You don't want to smush it so tight that these wires come out of place, okay? So don't worry about, don't worry about having like too big of a tail end, okay? And so again, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a turn just to get it started. And I'm going to squish, whatever you want to call it. There, okay. So this is what the front looks like. And don't worry, like you can see the ends here a little bit. You can kind of see the ends here a little bit. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, because what we're going to do next is we're going to use, after we get our cabochon in here, we are going to take these wires and we are going to turn them into very pretty decorative things that cover up all those little ends, so you won't see them. Okay, so now again, so I'm just gonna, okay, so here I'm just gonna use my pliers to straighten these out one more time. All right, and all right, so we've got the front and the back. All right, so I'm going to put my cabochon in here from the back. All right, let's see, did I get that even? Yeah, I guess that's pretty even. All right, I guess that's pretty even. Yeah, I guess that's pretty even. Okay, so we've got our cabochon in here now. Now we're going to flip it over onto the back. Okay, and we're going to secure it. We're going to start to secure it. So what I like to do with this, okay, you can use a fingernail just to kind of wedge that far back wire. Okay, get your fingernail in there. And then once you have a tiny little gap, you got that tiny little opening, we're going to take our pliers, wedge our pliers down as far as we can go. Okay, now I'm going to say a word here about tool marks. Okay, you might, as you start working, right, you might have a couple of tool marks on your wire. Don't worry too much about it. If they're really, really bad, obvious tool marks, you can get like an emery board, like a good emery board, or a little bit of sandpaper, and you can just kind of file them out. Okay. But for me, what I found, the trick to not having tool marks is to get it in there, grab it gently, okay, and then just give it one twist and then release. Okay, now when I did that, right, when I gave it that gentle little twist, I was holding it up here so that the whole wire did go right into the middle. Okay, and I'll show you again on this side. I'll show you again on this side. So I'm just going to use my fingernail to get it in there and make just a little space, right? Just give yourself enough space to wiggle your pliers in there. Grab it. And notice how I'm holding up here, right? I'm kind of holding the top part of the wire in place, grabbing it gently, giving a little turn, and then release. Okay? And then use your finger to kind of smush it down. Okay? Give it a little smush down. Right? So that's the back of your cabochon. Okay? And that's the back of your cabochon. And now we're going to do this again in the front. Okay, same thing. Except we're doing with that top wire, right? And again, and this is why it's really important to keep those three wires stacked one on top of another. I can't tell you how many times it took me to figure that out. Trial and error. How many times it took me to figure out you have to keep your wires stacked, okay? Really important. Sorry, I was getting kind of dry. And then once you have that, just wiggle it, make a little space, hold the top of the wire with your hand. Whoops, try not to poke yourself because it hurts. Ow, see? Maybe I need a little bigger space. There we go. Get it in there, get down near the bottom, one gentle twist and release, and just press it. Okay? Same thing on the other side. Wiggle it open. Right, just a little bit. You don't have to break your fingernails. Wiggle your pliers. When you feel that resistance, you're done, right? Meet your resistance, little tiny twist, and there you go. Okay, so this is actually like, this isn't gonna fall out. Okay, this isn't gonna fall out. Okay, that's not gonna fall out. That's just gonna stay. So like I'll be honest with you. I really like to keep my wraps simple. I've been working lately on some more. Some more intricate, woven wraps and things like that. But these basic techniques, you would be amazed. You'd be amazed at how many things, right, you can do with just these basic techniques. I mean, you can wrap pretty much anything with these basic techniques, okay? this. This one I did exactly, this quartz crystal here, I did exactly the same way as I'm doing this calibrated cabochon, right? I will give you another tip. Don't be afraid to cut it up and start over. I should have brought like all the bales that I recently like cut apart because I just didn't like them, and I am now in the process of rewrapping. So don't be afraid if it's not looking the way you want it to. You know, copper is relatively inexpensive. Don't be afraid to cut it apart and start over. You know, it's a learning curve, right? It's not set in stone. You know, the world's not going to end if you decide you don't like it and you're going to cut it apart. All right. So, again, I've got my stone in there. It's really set. It's set really well in there. Okay. I'm going to give it another gentle little squish with my fingers. Then, okay, so now we're going to take these two wires. These are on the right-hand side. Okay, my right-hand side. And we're going to take them. And this is where it gets fun. You can, you know, it gets artistic. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Don't worry if it's absolutely perfect. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bend them over towards the left, okay, and make a little swirl. Use your fingers, right? You can use pliers if you want to. I really like the organic swirly look, okay? So we've just got this pretty little swirl, just kind of accenting the bale there, right? Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Like this one, you can kind of see, I got all adventurous and I did a little swirl and a loop and then I wrapped it around, okay? I got really adventurous with that one. This one, again, I did kind of like a figure 8 wannabe sort of thing here. For this one today, I'm just going to do a basic, just one little swoop, and then I'm going to hold it here with my thumb, right? Your hands are probably the most valuable tool that you're gonna have with this, okay? I mentioned before that I'm a yoga teacher, so, or I was a yoga teacher before the pandemic. And, you know, it really pays to work with your hands and get a feel for these materials, you know, get a feel for how the wire, right? The wire is fluid. You wouldn't think to like look at this, but wire is fluid, okay? And for me anyway, personally, I really loved learning how it flows, the feel of the flow in my hands, okay? So for me, that's a big thing. It may be different for you, but that's just for me. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around the back, okay? All the way around the back, keeping them together, okay? And again, using your fingers just to gently, you don't have to like hold it down, just gently, firmly hold it in place. I'm going to wrap these around the front. Okay, so now, again, I've got these wires here in the front. If you like spirals, I love to make spirals. You can curl them into spirals if you would like, okay? I'm not going to do spirals today. I'm just going to show you how to tuck them in, all right? So either making your little spirals, in which case you would just, you know, use your pliers here to just make a tiny little curl, right? And then start making your spirals. Or if you're just going to tuck them in, right? Bend them out just a little bit. And again, just like we did, remember how we tucked the bale wires in? We're going to trim them. Boom. Just like that. Okay. We're going to trim them. And then we're going to use our needle nose pliers. And we're just going to gently bend them in towards the center. Okay. And then what I like to do is I'll flip it over and go in from the back and smush them down, okay? And again, giving them that little smush up against your bezel there, that is, you know, wrapping it around, that is going to be yet another way to secure your stone in your bezel, okay? Now here's where it gets a little bit fun. Here's where it gets a little more fun. We're going to take these two, and we're going to start... We're gonna do these. You can leave these totally plain if you want, if you just like the plain. But I like to jazz them up a little bit. I like to twist them and wrap them. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take the one on the bottom. Okay, and take this one on the bottom, and you know you don't really need You know, you can if you have a twisty tool, but grab the tip in your pliers and just start twisting. Just give it a little twist. And you can give it a lot of twist. You can give it a little twist. I think I'm going to give this one a decent amount of twist. There we go. Twisty wire. Okay. Twisty square wire is so much fun. And then I'm just going to, again, using my fingers. You can use, if you have a bail making plier, use your bail making pliers. Okay. But I just decided to just do a gentle bend on my own, just with my fingers. I'm going to wrap it around the front. And this one I'm going to tuck in on this side. Okay, I'm going to tuck it in on the opposite side because again, going back and forth, we're going to secure that bail even more. So just like we did before, I'm going to trim it. You got a little, now you, look at that, now you have a little bit of twisty wire you can use, save that and use it as decoration for something else. Okay, use your pliers. And actually, I think I'm going to trim that just a little bit more. That's a little bit long. There we go. And then I'm going to give it a little bend. And I'm going to come from the opposite side here. Reach in and smush. Squish it down. Okay. So now we got that. Now we're going to do with this guy. All right. So I'm going to take a short length, a few inches of my half round copper. You get all my pieces in a row here, okay? And again, take a quick look, make sure you got the flat end, okay? So I'm going to put the flat end, all right, so I'm holding the bezel, I'm holding this, I'm holding it with the back facing me, and I'm going to put the flat end against that, and I'm going to wrap my half round around my square. Okay, so what I like to do, I leave myself a really generous tail here. And you don't want to wrap too tightly at first, okay? So I'm going to do a couple just to get it started here in the middle. And then I'm going to take that tail, and I'm going to wrap the tail, okay? I'm going to wrap the tail. And you can add, you can add beads, you can add, you can add, like if you have a bead with a hole that's big enough, like I did on this one, right? If you have a bead with a hole that's big enough, you can, see like this one I didn't wrap with half round. All I did was I put this giant onyx bead on it and then swooped it around, okay? Ooh, there's a tail on that one I missed. Ooh! Yikes, there we go. So I just put this giant onyx bead on it, okay? But, right, so now that I've got my little tail wrapped around here, I'm going to give it a tiny squish, just enough, and then I'm going to grab this, slide that wire all the way down inside the bail. Oops. Okay, so you can see I slid it as far down as I could. And now I'm just going to finish wrapping. Now I'm just going to finish wrapping with this. Okay. So la-di-da-di-da, whatever you want to do while you're wrapping. You can meditate. You can do anything, right? And again, just like I did when I was doing my bail, as you wrap, use your fingers or use your pliers to just kind of whoop. There we go. Use your fingers or your pliers to just kind of smush it down. Okay. I still have not perfected the art of doing a live feed without at least once whacking into my phone and my tripod. So one of these days I will figure it out. I promise you guys. All right, so I'm going to wrap this around. And again, as you're wrapping it, it's going to get a little harder. You're work hardening this, okay, so that it holds up better. It's sturdier, okay. And again, I get all the way there, and I'm just going to secure it. I'm going to secure the end with a little tiny smoosh, right? The other reason it's good to do these little tiny smooshes, okay, is to make sure, because you don't want any super rough ends. You don't want your wire to poke you to you know, you don't want to get poked by a piece of sharp wire when you're wearing a nice piece of jewelry. All right. So then the same thing. And again, like you can use your bails, you can use your bail making pliers, but I find that I can just wrap this. It just follows the curve nicely. Wrap it around. All right. And again, if you want, I think I am going to make a little spiral with this one. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this all the way around, right? So I wrap it all the way around the back. I'm going to kind of line it up with my pliers. I wrap it all the way around the back. And I think I'm going to make a little spiral with this one. So what I'm going to do, and actually, no, I'm going to twist it first. Ha ha ha. I'm going to make a twisty spiral on this one. Just because I feel like being fancy today. How's that? Oops. There we go. So I'm going to twist it. So I have my nice twisty wire here, right? Super easy to get that beautiful twisty. And then I'm just going to take my pliers. I'm going to make a tiny little, you see that little tiny hook? Little tiny hook. Wee little tiny hook. I'm going to smush it. And then very gently. Now this, if I had my other chain nose pliers, I would probably do that. But I'm just going to grab it and gently make a little bitty spiral. I love to make spirals. Spirals are so much fun, right? There's our little spiral off to the side. Yeah, you can totally do this with round wire if that's all you have, because that was all I had when I got started. All I had was regular round wire. And it works, and it totally works. It totally works. So if all you have is round wire to get started, then yeah, go for it. Do it. Right. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give this just a little extra security. Okay. I'm going to make tiny little bends. I'm going to grab, again, see that back wire, start on the back. I'm going to grab that back wire, give it a little twist, just a little. I'm going to do the other side. Okay. Grab that back wire. And just give it a tiny little bend, okay? So you see we got the little bends at the top and the big bends at the bottom. And there is no way that stone is going anywhere, okay? And on this one, I think I'm just going to do it, because I've got the spiral on the one side, I'm just going to do it on this side. I'm just going to take that frontmost wire. Let's see, which way am I doing here? Left versus right. I can't figure out which way to go. Here we go. Ay, ay, ay. I'm going to give it a little bend. There's a little tool mark. I'll have to get that out later. There we go. Give it a tiny little bend. Okay. There. Tiny little bend. So this stone ain't going anywhere. And now we have this pretty little cabochon. Matte carnelian. In a super fun, very secure. And again, this stone, this ain't going anywhere. You see how tight that is? That ain't going anywhere. The only way that stone is coming out is if somebody like purposely bends the wire and yanks the stone out. That stone ain't going anywhere. Okay, that stone ain't going anywhere. Which always blows my mind. Like how, yeah, it always blows my mind. Like, how does that work? Like, I don't get it. But it stays, right? It stays. And the beautiful thing, right? So the beautiful thing too, even though you're using dead soft wire, like I was saying before, as you're working with it, you're gently work hardening this wire. So it is going to hold up. It's definitely going to hold up. So now, right? So now you've seen how to do it. And again, like I said, that's about as big as I would go. This is about as big as I would go. If you're going to do a stone that's bigger than that, okay, or one of these, right, one of these uniquely cut, right, this isn't a round or an oval, but it's got like this really cool kind of flame wavy shape, right, okay. You can do this with a square stone, okay, so basically you're going to do all that stuff with the top, right? The top stays exactly the same, but you only need to use 2 pieces of your square copper, okay? You only need to use crystal stones. Deborah, are you talking about like Swarovski stones? I don't know if we're supposed to use that name. Or like Preciosa or any of those. Um, you probably can. You probably can. I would be more careful using using a glass crystal. I would just be more careful of yeah. So if you're using like a precocia, like a like one of the Czech crystals, I would definitely be more careful with the pliers because I would worry that the pliers are going to scratch the stone. Okay, I know there are some people that do wrap them this way, so you can do it. But like I said, I would just worry about scratching the face of a glass or crystal stone, right? And also the back, right? Because a lot of those stones are coated in the back, and I would worry about scratching with your pliers. One way to do that, one way if you want to do that, you can get that tool magic stuff. You can get some tool magic and dip that in there. I've also seen people wrap their pliers with wrap the jaws of their pliers with like masking tape. So that would be one way to reduce the risk of scratching a glass or crystal stone. Okay. So yeah, but I would be super duper careful. And again, also when you're cutting, yeah, so you can do it with tool magic, try it with the tool magic and see what happens. But, be very, very careful about scratching a glass stone. But yeah, go for it. I actually have, this is a ceramic cabochon that I got from someone that I have been dying to wrap. Parafilm, yes, Onya, yeah, parafilm, that's another good one that you can use. I used to be a veterinary technician, so I used to use, sometimes I would put like I would put like one layer of vet wrap. It's like a bandage wrap. I would do that. So you can do that. Okay. But so I'll tell you with this, right, with this one, right, with the square cabochon, I don't know how much time we have left here. I can't see my clock on my, 11:52. Oh, wow. So we're almost done. All right. So, so I'm not going to have time to go through the whole thing with the square one, but what I will tell you is, right, so remember how we started this one with the bottom, right? I'll give you these I'll give you a quick yeah, nylon jaw pliers work well, Pammy, absolutely. Okay, so okay, twisted wire, no idea what to do with it. You can use the twisted wire the same as you use the regular square wire in here, Oh, that's right, Anya. Yeah. See, and because I don't use the foiled stones too often. Mm. So yeah, you can protect the back before you start wrapping and protect the jaws, coat the jaws of your pliers as well. And just make sure, that that you're careful about scratching. So anyway, so to do a square or a rectangle cabochon, okay? Right? You start out the same way, but you're only going to use two. You're only going to use two wires, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to start out with that same thing that we did by wrapping the bottom. Okay, you're going to wrap the bottom. And then the same thing as we did before, what you're going to do is you're just going to bend gently around, okay? And it's a little trickier to get that bend. It's a little trickier to get that bend around a square stone. But the good part is you don't have to worry about getting it exactly right. Yay! You don't have to worry about getting exactly right. So then what you do, once you bend it around here, you're going to make more of those little wraps with your half round wire up the sides, okay? As evenly as you can. You can, if you do want to get it super duper even, I do recommend marking it with a little bit of Sharpie, okay, with a Sharpie marker. You can do that, all right? And then, once you get up to the top, you're going to bring them together. You're going to bring those, all right, so you're only going to have 4 wires instead of 6 at the top, okay? And then what you're going to do, just, to get it in there, you're just gonna, I hope you guys can picture this. I'll have to do another video another time with this square one. But what you're gonna do, just like you did, you're just gonna wiggle your nail in between those two wires. And what size gauge for the wraps on the sides? Okay, 22 gauge. 22 gauge half round wire is what I've been using for all my wraps on this. Okay, 22 gauge half round wire. And again, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's so worth it. It's so worth learning how to use this half round wire because it just looks beautiful. The lines are just beautiful that you get with this. Okay. So you'll make, right, so 20 gauge, right, so you're using, again, you're using 20 gauge. I'm just going to straighten that a little bit here, right, so you're using 20 gauge for your bezel wires, and you're using 22, okay, for your wraps. If you have like ginormous stones, I have a couple of giant artisan cabochons that I got out in Tucson, and then I got at some of the other bead shows that I have not used yet because I'm gonna get some heavier gauge wire to wrap those in. Okay, but again, and like this one, right? This one I did the same. Oh, this one actually I used 3 wires, so that's not a good example. But this one just 2 wires. Okay, you're gonna wiggle those corners open. Wiggle those corners open, slide your stone in, and you don't even have to use your pliers for the square stones. You can just use your fingers. Your most valuable tool is going to be your fingers. You can just use your fingers and gently squeeze, right? Very gently. Okay? Very gently squeeze them in. Okay? Same thing at the top. Now this one, when I did it, I kind of miscalculated and I used way too much wire for the top. So what I did was I filled in that space like I did on this one, right? This one I did on purpose though. Like this one I wanted the bottom there. I wanted it so I could nestle a little bead in there. This one was an accident, but I cleaned it up pretty well. I found a giant citrine bead, made some twisty wire, twisted that around it, and just wired that into that little space, okay? Same way I wired it in down here, right? All you have to do is put the bead on a wire, and you're just going to wrap the ends, right? Wrap the ends around your bezel wires, okay? You're just going to wrap them in, and so there's really, I mean, the sky's the limit with this technique, you know. You can, yes, Catherine, you can do the same thing with twisted wire. You absolutely can. You know, I don't work with a lot of twisted wire when I'm making my bezels here. I like to use it mainly for embellishment, and when I do it for the embellishment, then I do it myself. I just kind of like twist it around. But yeah, you can totally make a bezel. You can totally make a bezel with twisted wire. It's basically the same thing. It's the same techniques, right? The same techniques. Yeah. So I think I covered everything there. You know, and again, you know, so these, right? These are different shaped stones. Basically using the same technique, right? Starting out with let's see, I'm moving down a little here. You know, starting out with that base wrap, and then, you know, pulling from this one, all I did was I wrapped around the sides for a little extra security. And again, these stones, like, they're not going anywhere. They're in there. This is a giant slab of polished labradorite that I just got from one of my cutters, one of my suppliers in India. And again, I use, you know, so this one I used 3 wires instead of 2, like the squares. I used 3 wires. And then what I did, once I kind of bent these in, right? Once I bent the front and back wires in, you know, you can take that center wire, right? Take that center wire, just use the side of your pliers and gently press it up so that it, right? So that it stays, it keeps the shape of the stone that you're wrapping. So, you know, you can really do this with like any shaped stone. Like I said, the bigger the stone, the more important it is to do these little wraps on the side. And you do those wraps on the side the same way you do the wrap on the bottom, okay? It's the same thing. You always want to make sure you have your tails tucked to the inside. And just one last tip, when you're done, right? When you're done with any wrapping project, run your fingers all over it. Okay, and if you feel a little sharp thing poking out, right, run your fingers over as much of it as you can reach with your hands. If you feel anything sharp, anything pokes you, then it's time to get your pliers and smush or otherwise tuck in something that might be sticking out and poking you, because you don't want, right, you don't want to have this up against your skin and have a bunch of pokey wires out here in the back or on the bottom. So, yeah, so I think that's my hour. I think that's my full hour. If you guys have any questions that I didn't cover, leave them as a comment, and I will get to them as soon as humanly possible. And go have some fun with some wire. Go have some fun today. Go experiment. Don't be afraid to rip it out if it doesn't work. And yes, thank you, Sarah James, for inviting me. Thank you, Jesse James Beads, for hosting me today. And I hope you guys all have like a fabulous day. So see you around.